hit the gavel unless I miss the meeting. I can't see who's on Zoom, so.
I'm here, DG.
Yes.
I'm also here, Joe Mann.
Okay, Joe Mann.
Oh, good.
Here.
Joe,
Hi, Joe. Tom Saul,
Hi.
here.
Jim Baumker,
Here.
DG Garcia,
Here.
Charlie Jenks.
So my Zoom just.
Charlie,
Yep.
can you hear us?
Oh.
We'll wait on him. Yeah.
Dale Robbins.
He's muted, we might have to unmute. Oh, there we go.
Uh-oh. Let me see if he has to mute or Dale has to.
Ready.
Did you say you have to unmute or Dale has to? Oh. Okay.
And as of last night, we were able to do chat without raising our hand. Which would be nice if any of our Zoom people are there.
Are you there, Dale?
Yes.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right.
Phil Foyer,
I am here.
Gene Hutchel,
Here.
and Troy Mullenix.
Or did ask.
Right,
Excused.
and I thought that we might have another, thank you, I'm glad Joe's here. Do I hear a motion to excuse Troy?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Make a motion. Did
Oh,
you want to be excused?
Let's wait for Charlie. In case he comes back on. And second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Troy is excused. He had to fill in for his wife today.
Second.
Review of the agenda. Has everybody been able to go through their packet and do they have any additions or corrections to our agenda? Or to the minutes from April 10th? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for both of those to be approved.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Carried unanimously, and we did it in one vote. All right, for our workshops, we have the proposed lighting code amendments, and Lisa's gonna give us this. Everybody should have seen that, and since the last meeting, we were all given the location, so we don't have to look at that anymore. We know about where we're speaking. Okay. Yeah.
No.
You're not getting, there's a red light.
There you go. Yeah, I'm not able to get on Zoom either.
Can I forward that presentation? Yes.
Shut.
Her mic is.
We tested this before it started, guys, just so you know.
Last night was working really good, so.
Well, we're gonna have the problems.
Yeah.
You know, want to send it to your regular email or to use.
Activity.
If you want to drop it, that's on P drive. Oh, it is on the P drive. It is on C drive, yeah. Where's it at? Okay, so that, I'm gonna walk you through it.
That's business.
So. Hold on a second, I have to go here. So it's.
You're gonna get me.
I'll shut up.
It's okay, all right. I have to open it up so I can see it. No, I didn't back up. I'm. Can you have access over there? Are you online?
I believe so. I haven't actually tested that.
You send Evan I can't even get into the. Drive, so. to send it actually to, you can drag it to the top layer of the Q drive if you want.
Lisa, this is Dale Robbins. I can see and hear everyone.
Well, that's good. I'm trying to get my presentation up, so, all right, so I can walk you through this. So this is on.
All right, I just have to see if it's gonna let me connect.
So I've got it now, I can
It's-
tell you where to get.
I was connected,
Oh,
but I-
now we're up to, yes. So if you go to the P drive. Yep. Planning and community development is the first. one. And click on planning commission. Then. On the planning commission, go to 2024 agenda packet simulations. Then go to 05, May 8th, 2024. In that, you'll see the PC presentation 5/8/24. Got it, 1 second. Thank you. Thought we had a better system this time, sorry.
Oh, we're gonna have to, I'm gonna have to say next slide, please.
Full deal.
It's okay. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Here we go. So this workshop's on the lighting standard amendment for recreational facilities. Next slide, please. So I want to give you a context to this. This is an amendment, this amendment is proposed to our development code as part of a privately initiated annual amendment to the development code. It is site specific, it's any site specific considerations and details regarding how the applicant will apply the proposed amendments are not germane to this conversation. The Planning Commission is tasked with looking at the implications of these proposed amendments from the perspective of any potential development that could occur within these zones that are being proposed for change. The Planning Commission can recommend revisions to the proposed amendments in order to limit or mitigate potential impacts or to ensure compatibility with the intent of the comp plan or the intent of the development code. And we'll get into a little bit of that. Next slide, please. So first, this is in summary, what has been proposed to be changed to our lighting standards for recreational facilities. So first of all, they've proposed to increase the glare rating for recreational facility lighting from G3 to G5 in specific zones. Now, so the G is the glare rating of a bug rating, but I want to point this out to you. I'm not sure that you're aware of this. The glare ratings only go up to 5. So basically that's the most glare that you can have, or it's the highest glare rating you can have. It is proposed for the commercial zones, C1 and C2. It's also proposed for the mixed use zones, M1, M2, M3. What's interesting is you'll see later that recreational facilities are not allowed in M3. So it's a little internally inconsistent. Recreational uses in those zones are not subject to existing limitations regarding hours. That's again what they're proposing. And right now it's limited to 11 a.m. Also allowing light trespass to adjacent properties with an easement that runs with the land. They've actually provided specific language to that effect. I would argue that already exists. That if somebody had an easement, a perpetual easement allowing light trespass because they're sharing parking lots, I think that piece is not necessary. Although it is, they're making it more explicit. I would say that would already be my interpretation. And so I just wanted to spend a little bit of time. This is the map that Amy had Megan prepare for you all last time. These are all the zones that are involved, excluding the open space area in the middle that's hashed out. So these are what you're seeing is the light blue is the M2, the dark blue is the M3, the almost not quite light blue is the M1. We have the red is River District commercial, which is freeway commercial, and also freeway commercial that's not in the River District. So anyhow, so that's the area that those are the areas represents greater than a third of the city, where these recreational facilities would have these exemptions for, or these new standards for lighting. Next slide, please. So what zones allow recreational facilities? Parks and Rec is allowed in all zones, but participant and spectator sports are allowed in mixed use zones of the M1 and M2 only. So again, we should, you may want to consider limiting the M3 because it kind of doesn't make sense. They're also allowed in commercial zones C1 and C2, light industrial zones, and the open space zone. So the light industrial zone and open space are not part of this, but the M3, is a zone that doesn't allow them to begin with, at least not commercial entities. Next slide, please. So I looked through the comp plan goals and policies, and there's really only one policy related to lighting, and that's urban design policy number 14. In an effort to preserve the value of the community's night sky, outdoor lighting should be downward facing and shall be limited in height, number, and intensity of fixtures needed to provide sufficient security and identification on residential, commercial, and other development. So that's the policy. Next slide, please. When we look at the Liberty Lake lighting ordinance, so I want to point out that this lighting ordinance was adopted in December of 2020. It was intended to clean up and simplify and make more implementable the lighting standards that to support our values related to the dark sky. And this is the purpose statement, and I think this is important. The purpose of this section is to provide regulations that preserve and enhance the view of the dark sky, promote health, safety, security, and productivity, help protect natural resources. The provision of this section are intended to control sky glow, glare, and light trespass. It is the intent of this section to provide standards for appropriate lighting practices and systems that will enable people to see essential detail in order that they may undertake their activities at night, facilitate safety and security of persons and property, and curtail the degradation of the nighttime visual environment. So as you can see, there's a little bit of a balancing act in that purpose statement. Next slide, please. So I want to point out the criteria for approval of a code amendment. And I think that it's important to keep these in mind. Such amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan and is not detrimental to the public welfare. By Washington State Code, any change to the development code has to be consistent with the comp plan. So if you find that it's not consistent, your choices are either to deny it or to change the policy that you find it not to be consistent with. And again, I think that you're dealing in shades of gray. So I want to be clear on that. I'm not promoting it one way or the other. I'm just pointing out the things that you as a planning commission need to consider. Is it or is it not consistent with that policy? Change in economic technology or land use conditions has occurred to warrant modification. It is found that an amendment is necessary to correct an error. It is found that an amendment is necessary to clarify intent or meaning. It is found that an amendment is necessary to provide for a use that was not previously addressed, or those amendments as deemed necessary by the city council as being in the public interest. So you can have any of those criteria justify it, but remember, it's got to be internally consistent with your development code, and it's got to be consistent with your comp plan. And those are two major factors that you're going to have to take into consideration. It's a balancing act, right? Next slide, please. Possible considerations. So here's some thoughts about some of the things that you as a planning commission could do if you have concerns about what's being proposed. You could potentially limit the zones to which this would apply. So they've proposed M1, 2, and 3 and C1 and 2. You may decide to say, oh, I really only think that it should happen in the C1 and 2 zone. Potentially, or or along the I-90 corridor or something like that. You could limit the hours past 11 p.m., possibly to midnight or 1 p.m. Or you could create a standard for the lighting after 11 p.m. or midnight, possibly to meet the G3 standard, which is what is the standard now in those zones. You could propose separation distances from residential zones to try and mitigate the impact on residences. You could recommend an amendment to the urban design policy 14 if you found it to be inconsistent. So that is something that you could certainly recommend if you found that there were inconsistencies between that. You could also recommend an amendment to the purpose statement for the lighting standard if you find that to be inconsistent. So those are kind of the tools you have in your tool belt to address concerns that I heard different concerns at your last meeting. I just wanted you to know that there are ways you could approach this if you think that the concept is good, but it's more than what you're comfortable in recommending for approval. There are things you could do to try and, again, mitigate some of the impacts that you're concerned about. If that is the desire of this board, and then those recommendations would go on to city council. Next slide, please. Now is your opportunity to discuss it. I just wanted to tee up the discussion and give you all an opportunity to really have a discussion about it. I'm not sure, but I believe it was the intent of the applicants to be online to hear your concerns. And and I'm not sure if they're on or not, are they? They are. Okay. And you may at the end want to ask them some questions, and they can be promoted as panelists from that point. Turning
Okay,
it over to you.
and the proposed changes that are in our packet are those that are in blue.
Yes,
And that is really, other than making changes outside of the staff recommendations, what we should be discussing today.
that is correct. And by the way, those aren't staff recommendations. They're just intended to be a palette of options that you might consider to
Guidelines.
address different
Okay.
concerns.
Anybody have comments? Mr. Bowker?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It sounds like DG's got on first.
Let DG go first.
No, I didn't even put my hand up. I don't have anything now. I think it's no questions here.
Okay,
Yeah, I have comments. If you can go back one slide to considerations. And I recognize that this is probably not a all-inclusive list of considerations, or there could be others.
There could be others,
But
absolutely.
a lot of what you put up here has fallen kind of in the things that I was thinking about. So I think the first I would say is creating a standard after 11 or midnight to meet the G3 standard might be more reasonable. If people understand what that suggestion means. In other words, you go through the G5 lighting standard till, I don't know, 11 p.m. Then after 11 p.m., take it down to the G3, because I understand the applicant was interested in having some available lighting to do maintenance work on the facility. and that in general, the facility would discontinue operations after 11 PM. So I think, that's a reasonable consideration.
I think their hours of operation ended at midnight.
I thought they said 11.
I'm pretty sure they said.
It's actually,
You don't have a microphone.
Either way, I understand the.
So whatever the operations,
Yeah.
whatever the hours of operation are.
so it is 11 AM, weekdays, it is till midnight on Fridays and Saturdays.
I see. Okay. And then the other thought was that to allow for G5 lighting in, what'd you say, 2/3 of the city approximately?
I said it's more than a third. It's almost probably 40%.
40% of the city?
Yeah.
I think that's a bit much, and I would suggest that the lighting on to allow for G5. Yeah, my thought was within a certain distance of the freeway. Because you have the freeway light intrusion already. And I don't know, is that a 200 yards, 300 yards on either side of the freeway?
So I can say that we do have it's actually in our definitions section, what we call the 90 corridor.
Yeah,
And I believe it's 250 feet.
250 feet.
On
On
either
either
side.
side.
Yeah, I don't know if that would be sufficient, 250 feet, maybe 250 yards. I just don't know how far,
Right.
but some reasonable distance with respect to the lighting that you've already got on the freeway. And so those would be my thoughts.
Mhm.
Joe,
Thank you. One of the things I think is important for us to consider is we have one applicant, but by changing this, we open this up to anyone else that might want to bring in very high intensity lighting, whether it's recreational or whatever it is. That is just something we have to keep in mind, that we have one applicant, but it affects all of those properties. Also, I would be very much, I'm in favor of doing this, but only if we limit it to the commercial zones. I don't think the mixed use zones need to be changed to provide this kind of lighting. This particular applicant, I'm assuming, is looking, since they're looking at a 10-acre parcel, is mostly going to be looking in the commercial zones anyway. So I would rather see us just limit it. I don't have a real problem with the illumination numbers, whether they're G3 or G5, if it's in the commercial zone.
Can
Mhm.
I just make a point that, that people have been hung up on this 10-acre piece? Since properties can be both divided and aggregated, so segregated or aggregated, it could be multiple properties that make up a 10-acre site. It could also be a very large parcel that is where just a portion of it is going to be used for that. So I do want to caution you on making assumptions about that 10 acres.
however, to his point, we are talking about the C zones specific to this request, are we not?
No, it's the C zones and the M1, M2, and M3. Although,
As I pointed out, the M3 is probably not relevant and could easily be dropped since you can't do participant sports and recreational facilities in that zone. So that's the proposal, but you as a planning commission could say, well, we can, as Joe has pointed out, that you could limit those zones to just the commercial zones, C1 and C2. And the commercial zones in the river district.
Gene, any comments?
My comment would be similar to what we just heard. I think limiting the zones
to which this, limiting the zones to which this would apply is quite appropriate.
Bill. Hang on a sec. Bill. Go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yes, I am.
Correct me if I'm wrong, it has happened. G5 rating is what we currently see at the high school field when the lights are on, at the football field.
I do that because that was done under a prior code and they are fully cut off. So I'm not sure what the glare rating is
I
with that.
thought that was a suggestion at our last meeting, was it's no different than what we currently see, but.
So I don't have the
Yeah, yeah,
data
yeah.
to confirm or deny.
Okay, this, everything we're discussing revolves around recreational outdoor facilities, correct?
Yes.
Nothing else,
At this point in time,
as it applies to these zones.
as it applies to these zones. Now, the question is, if we open the door with recreational facilities, are we creating a slippery slope? And someone else who wants to have, propose it for a car lot.
That's
Right.
why I'm asking, is it recreational outdoor facilities?
That's all that this proposal is limited to. But again,
I understand what you're saying. So in my mind, an outdoor recreational facility could be a ball field, could be a soccer field. I mean, I'm asking myself, what could that possibly be?
Concert venue,
Concert venue?
yes,
Okay. Anything else that you can think of that?
A drive-in theater.
a raceway.
raceway,
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. So when you ask us to take the blinders off and see how this could be applied across the board.
Right.
Those are the questions that come to mind for me. What could be used under this that we may not like? Everything that you've just identified to me takes more than just a little piece of land. Fair enough? So I took a little bit of time and I measured the biggest ball field over at the high school. Just the ball field alone takes 400 feet by 400 feet, not including parking. Okay, so then I took the map that you gave us and I went to Scout, and a lot of this area is already being built or is already spoken for. So I went and circled the areas that were open land. Fair enough. And so then I take a closer look at it and, okay, take the applicant out of this scenario because we know they need a bigger parcel. How would this impact a soccer field, or a racetrack would need much more space than a soccer field or a baseball field? Because I hope someday the city will buy some land and put in some more baseball fields because it's been asked for.
Yeah.
And this would apply to that, would it not?
It would.
Absolutely. So to me, you're really limited on the application based on what's available, what the lands that are available within the city. So when you look at the map, yes, it's 40%, but how much of it is really usable for this application? That's how I'm approaching this.
yeah, what's your definition of usable?
Well, if it's
That would
gonna be for,
qualify
if
to
it's
be
gonna
used.
be for, it's recreational outdoor use.
Yep.
And if it's this, in my opinion, just my opinion, the smallest application would be one ball diamond, which you'd be crazy to just do one. If you ask me. And that's why I measured the one over at the high school. It's 400 feet by 400 feet. So where could you put that in the space that's available?
What do you mean by available?
Well, if you look at
The space is not already being used.
undeveloped,
But what about if you have space that is being developed, but it could be changed?
well, what I'm saying is the areas
In other
I have
words, if-
identified,
just
there's no.
because the space is developed today for a purpose,
Mhm.
doesn't mean that in the future, that space couldn't be developed for something else.
I mean, like Meadowood
That's
Tech Center.
Like Meadowood Tech Center,
Sure,
which
understand.
Sure.
has.
Good
So
point.
I don't think, I understand. I just don't think you can look strictly at what undeveloped, because that's because it's space that's developed now. Could, if we make the change, it could be developed into something else,
I just don't, I'm not gonna put a lot of, I'm not confident that somebody would tear down existing real piece of property to put in an outdoor recreation, they could.
They could.
But we also have checks and balances when it comes to the application of what it is, correct?
I explain what you mean by checks and balances.
Well, there's a process you have to go through, so many feet away from neighboring properties, so on and so on. As far as if you wanted to do an outdoor recreational facility.
We don't have much in terms of standards in our code for that.
Okay. Then if I can, just let me continue, yeah? The policy says should and shall all over it, doesn't say will, and so it's very gray. To try to use that as the dominating force of this discussion, in my opinion, this is my opinion, we kind of lost sight of that a long time ago. When you think about its continuous lights from downtown Spokane all the way to the other end of Coeur d'Alene right now. And it's just the result of development near the transportation corridor. It's where they want everybody to be, right? They don't want us to spread out. They want us to be in the corridor. So you're going to have a certain amount of that, what you're trying to eliminate, you're going to have it just because of the natural development of how things work out. I'd be in favor of, like what was suggested, limiting the hours to something, a lower glow after business hours. And I'd certainly be in favor of setting some distance to residential. Another part of I hear what you're saying on the freeway corridor, but I wouldn't want to put that in this document because that's going to give fewer options for soccer fields, ball fields and such.
Okay. DG.
Yes, in regards to this whole project, I think the most important thing is remembering the residential, and whatever we can not to impact residential areas is a must. If that is to limit the lighting, the intensity of the lighting, and other aspects, the most important thing that'll kill a community is if we impact their quality of life and general well-being. And that can happen if we are not consistent in our charge of protecting the general welfare. So for me, limiting the lighting, all sorts of areas that have been talked about today, I can agree with most of them, but let's just be cognizant. I personally, this is only my opinion, recognize that once we trespass on the well-being, general well-being of the residents, we're going to lose their trust on anything else. It will not matter what else we do from that point.
Okay, just a thought, DG, and this comes from my background in law enforcement, and that is that going along with what Phil was saying and others too about the development along our freeway system is a safe community was almost defined by the amount of lighting that it had back in the day. Lights and locks are two of the things that we were taught, yet, and somebody who just went through criminal justice understands that. And so the other part that I just say is it appears that we're going to have some lighting there anyway. But remember that the lighting is, as I recall, 15% of what the ball field is putting out. And so with regard to how much of an impact it's going to have and how much that is going to impact the public trust, I'm not sure that that's a valid point.
Well, I guess my point is, it's a general, basic, common for me sense decision is any high intensity lighting is going to harm someone's well-being. I mean, I know there's bad guys out there and we want lighting so people feel safe. I'm not even talking about the safe aspect because I think we're doing a pretty good job at that. But I'm saying if someone's window is facing a certain direction and they get the high intensity lighting in the ball field and this and that, we just have to look at all parameters, and in fact, maybe canvass the community with a question or two on how they feel about high intensity lighting in the event that we choose to go a direction that will put some homes in that same window of the high intensity that they're going to get. I lived in California, whether it's California or New Mexico, and quite a distance from my home, they put in a Walmart, and the Walmart had high intensity lighting, and they promised us that our homes, we wouldn't be impacted by that. Well, there was one room that we didn't go in the middle of the night because it was always lit in the middle of the night because of the high intensity lighting. And that messes with your sleep. That messes with my quality of life, takes in more than just being able to make sure I have security.
Okay. Dale, did you have
Thank you.
something? Dale, are you on?
Yes.
Have any comments?
No, Phil addressed mine. Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, let's go back around because it sounds like we have some specific things that we need to work out. And I think that start with Jim's recommendations that we limit the that we recommend. And again, before we get to, we're not changing anything. We're recommending things to the city council who will decide. How would you change on the top of page 2? How would you change the recommendation that has been put before us in a draft form? And is that appropriate? To
You also may want to give the. You may also want to give the applicant a chance
Yep.
to maybe address some of the concerns, and they may have some proposals for how to blend some of the different concerns that they have heard.
Good point.
into this.
Top Golf, are you on? Can you respond to any of the comments that were made? And if so, please identify yourself.
There you go. Scott Weddling. Yes, I'm here. I can answer any questions you might have.
You heard some of the concerns, Scott. Go ahead.
Yes, first concern was on hours of operation. I looked up our nearest 2 venues, which is Boise and Renton, and basically trying to remain consistent on the portfolio for Topgolf across the brand. Those hours of operations are Sunday through Thursday is 9 a.m. through 12 a.m. And Friday and Saturday are 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. It's the exact same hours of operation for both of those venues. That's what we would propose here as well. And then the second comment regarding the lighting and the G rating. The lighting that we use on all of our venues, it is a G5 rating. Talking with our vendor there, even if you were to dim the lights to, let's say, 50% or what have you past certain hours, technically the G rating is still just the G rating. It doesn't change the actual rating of the fixture itself, but we definitely do dim the lights substantially, especially after hours. We have like a 30-minute cleanup time that we would dim the lights to like a 25 or a 30% to have the cleanup crew be able to pick up all the balls at the end of the working shift. And then we shut them off after that. So that is something we could, I guess, specify or come up with a pretty clear cut guideline of operational, I guess, SOPs, standard operating procedures, and kind of share that with the city to make sure we're all on the same page there. I think the third concern was on the other uses of outdoor recreation. If there was concern on other uses, we Topgolf limits the light elevations that we put them on, we mount them inside the building. So if there was concern with other uses not, or, you know, maybe mounting the lights too high and being more of a visible entity, that you could limit the elevation that the lights can be installed at. You say lights cannot be installed anything higher than 45 feet above finished floor or something similar to that effect. It's just a suggestion on my part.
And to the issue about if we had residents, everything's going to be complaint driven. If we had residents who were having specific issues, what I heard you say the last time is that you went around and addressed those issues once the facility was built, and that it was an ongoing maintenance issue with regard to if there was excessive illumination someplace, or it was leaking or trespassing, I guess is the word we're using.
I think it was actually our Boise venue. It's just the most recent example where we had our lighting specialist come out and he did his calibrations and performed the light meter readings around the site and gave us the, you know, the proposed foot candle ratings around the property line and things of that nature. But shortly after we opened, there were some complaints about some glare because we were like adjacent to a highway there. So we were able to work with the city and have that guy come back out and realign some lights, as well as put some screens on top of them to kind of angle the lights to exactly where they need to be to minimize glare spillover. And we went back and forth with them to make sure everyone was happy. But I mean, that is something that we proactively do. I mean, we just not trying to be a salesman tactic here, but I mean, we plan to be a long-standing partner with the city. I mean, we're not just going to put them up and kind of go away. So we would definitely work with the city on making sure everyone's happy before we lock it down.
Okay, thank you. Other
no problem.
comments? Second round.
Scott,
Does that help? Who's it?
Scott, this is Joe Mann.
Oh, there you go.
Quick question. If we limit it to just commercial zones, would that limit your ability to be able to obtain property? Or can you answer that?
I want to say yes, just because there are multiple properties we're looking at, and there are multiple properties fall into the different zones. I mean, we are looking predominantly along the Highway 90 there, but there are multiple zones along that highway corridor. So that's why we are trying to capture basically the zones along that highway corridor, so that we have flexibility on choosing that final destination. I don't know if that answered your question, but it's just, I mean, if you only had one zone along the highway, then that would be a different answer, but there's multiple zones along that stretch.
I understand. But we will probably have to eliminate M3 because it doesn't allow recreational facilities anyway.
Yes, I think Lisa hit the nail on the head. It seems kind of redundant, I believe. So I think that makes sense.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
That M3.
That M3 right there.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I think just I think I hit everything. I'm here if you have any more questions.
Okay.
This is Dale Robbins. I have a question. What percentage of your business takes place after 11 p.m.?
You know, that's a great question. I actually do not know the answer to that one. But I mean, I know our Friday and Saturday nights are definitely our busiest times. So that's why we have extended hours during those 2 days.
Go ahead, Jim.
So then the other thought that I had is that the change be limited to, the zones are fine, but just within a certain distance either side of the freeway. And I don't know what that distance should be, but it's not feet, it's yards. Is it 300 yards? Is it 500 yards? I'm not quite sure, but that would be my thought. Some distance relative to north or south of that transportation corridor.
It would apply to all the zones.
Yeah,
I hear what
Can
you're
I
saying.
respond
Bill,
to
go
that?
ahead, yeah.
Um, uh, I don't 100% agree with that because we may find that we want to put a ball field somewhere that's not on top of the freeway. And it's a little closer to an adjoining parking lot somewhere within that zoned area. So I would be more in favor of just setting some distance to a residential boundary. Because then that kind of pushes you obviously away from the residential area, but it's going to naturally do what you want it to do and still give some flexibility to the potential for any other applications besides the applicant
well, right now,
or a
the
soccer field
yeah.
or whatever.
way it's the way the code is set now is that you can have that G5 up until there's a certain hour.
No, we don't allow G5 at all.
Okay,
The maximum glare rating in the code right now is a G3.
is G3. And the exception being the high school.
Well, the high school was permitted under the old code.
Understand. And
So, and there's other exceptions, I believe, in the area. I think if you looked at the highway or the car dealerships on the other side of the freeway that, I would suspect.
Yeah.
that they're, not in compliance either, but that it pass an expert's backdoor law. They're-
yeah, gotcha. But I just I'm trying to envision a baseball stadium or a football stadium for this community of Liberty Lake that would have hours going to 1 o'clock in the morning.
Again,
Yeah,
we have some language in this code that allows for the hours to extend up to midnight in recreational facilities, provided that the game was, if
you gotcha. Yeah, because you got to finish the game. Kind of thing. Okay. Then I'm, I think either way, if you say within a certain distance of the freeway or a certain distance from residential areas, I think you kind of get to the same objective, right, which is to protect the residential.
Well, the only reason, as I'm looking at the map, the only reason I say that is if you try to put a distance from the freeway, they're not gonna apply very well up and down the freeway to, Country Vista or Appleway or any of that. They're not gonna play well with each other, where if you
Because there's some
buffer-
residential areas already that are closer
if
to
you
the
buffer
freeway.
away from the residential areas, then
Understand.
you're,
Then I agree.
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
And what I like about that approach is that you're tying the standard directly to the thing that you're trying to mitigate.
Yeah. Okay. Agreed.
Because otherwise we'd be pretty arbitrary as to what we're trying to do. It's not a straight stretch of undeveloped land there.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
And you may want to identify what residential means.
Oh, you'll have to do that.
Yeah.
Are we talking just the residential zones? Does it apply to residential uses? And that gets a little trickier.
Right.
Because not all of the development has occurred yet. And so in these mixed use zones, so you
Right.
probably want to tie it. I'm thinking you probably want to tie it to a zone rather than a use, because uses change over
Just,
time.
yeah, just a flat across the
Agreed.
board
Yeah.
residential and R1 or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Yep.
If the high school is an example of G5, what would be an example of G3 for comparison purposes?
So again, I'm gonna say this, I do not know that the high school is a G5. I don't have the data on that. I don't have data on the ones that may be G5. I'm not sure. Amy, can you think of something that we have that we have approved that falls within the G3 category for lighting?
So this is Scott Wedeman with Top Golf. We talked with their lighting provider and they mentioned that the lights at the football stadium were G5. Just FYI.
My map isn't showing up and my brain isn't working, but I will think about that because I've issued quite a few
I
lighting.
don't think any of them, I don't think any of them have been built yet.
That's what I'm thinking. I know that I've approved them, but I don't know that they're actually built
I
yet. So
wonder
that I
if
would have,
Tesla, I wonder if Tesla was. That might actually have been before the code changed though.
But that's not an outdoor recreational facility.
No, it's not an outdoor recreational facility, but in terms of trying to get a sense of what G3.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Is
Yeah, yeah,
versus
a
G5.
comparison, yeah.
Can I get back to you guys on that? We'll do a little research and see if we can give you some
Yes.
examples. I can't give you an example of a G5 because I don't have that data to show that in the city, but I can certainly show you the G3 is if we have anything built since then.
Lisa, I think that would be great, but I think that that making a recommendation at this point, if we don't even know what a G3 standard is, we just don't have enough information.
Understood. So we can, I mean, I can give you an example of the G3. We might be able to get somebody in the lighting industry, and maybe this is something to put on the applicant to ask them when they come back to have their lighting expert give us some sort of a visual comparison of G3 to G5.
Perfect.
Scott, are you willing to do that?
Absolutely, that's not a problem.
Okay. Because then we're talking about experts as opposed to us, everything we're talking about right now. I don't know, maybe somebody in here has the expertise, but
And I said this
certainly don't.
before, we went with the bug rating because it's a simple, because we're not lighting experts.
Right.
It was a simple way for us to. And it was a model ordinance for dark sky. It was a simple way for us to administer this, not being lighting experts.
and dark sky, as I recall, had a lot to do with the amount of light that was going skyward as opposed to that, and DJ's concerned that's going residential and going sideways.
Sorry.
And we still have to limit the light trespass, but again, if, it can't trespass more than 10 feet off of the property boundary unless it's trespassing onto right of way, in which case the standard is 0 at the other side of the right of way, or if they had an easement from the adjacent property owner because or whatever. So I mean, that part of it, we will know, we do get those lighting pieces, so it's not light trespass to other properties so much as it is the upflow, the impact on the night sky.
So if we can get some answers to these questions for our next meeting. Scott, what's the time frame consideration for you? Are you in a time crunch here? Because we have to get it to the city council. We're looking at least a month before we're gonna be ready to make a recommendation.
It's more than a month. We have to at least, it's more than a month because we have to have secret, so.
Yes. Okay. Phil?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, didn't mean to have a funny outburst there, but I thought of that song, I Wear My Sunglasses at Night, when we were talking about that. Sorry. Little internal humor there.
Hey,
So,
when you're cool, the sun's always shining.
right.
Phil
exactly.
parties before we have the meetings.
So Scott, just to follow up again, on.
Lisa,
Tom's
before
question.
you jump into that, I do have a couple serious things to add if I
Okay.
can. So I'm hearing we're gonna strike M3. Is that what we've kind of agreed to? Because it doesn't apply anyways.
Well, so that's, again, nothing is final. This is just a workshop.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm hearing consensus with the applicant that he agrees that M3 doesn't make any sense.
Right. And we've talked about some limited hours. On the residential piece, can we get a little more time to think about that as far as a distance?
So this is what I'm gonna suggest to you. What I'm gonna suggest to you is that if Scott and Top Golf folks can come back for a workshop next time, that having heard what you said, they may have some have something to propose to you as to how they might approach those things. And that might be a good starting point for conversation.
And one last thing, I like their suggestion on the 45-foot height limit from ground level or top floor. We hadn't really roundtabled that at all. Was any desire for that? I think it's a good idea, but
I do too.
So.
I appreciate the suggestion from,
If you're saying, and I think that is a good idea, but I do also want to point out that you do have an allowance of up to 70 feet in some of those zones.
oh, you do?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say 45 feet seems a little bit capricious. It's not very high.
That's
When
true.
you're starting to talk about an area where you have 10 acres that you're actually
Make
trying
sure you're talking here so he can hear you.
10 acres that you're trying to illuminate.
Yeah.
45 feet is,
Or just about.
I think
Yeah.
would find you wanting. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. I just didn't want to let that one slip by without a little conversation. Thanks. That's all I have.
So Scott, I guess just circling back to the question that Tom had raised, are you guys willing to come back to present to the planning commission in a workshop format at the next meeting to kind of give you a chance to gather some information and maybe give some consideration for some of the concerns that have been mentioned here?
Yeah, I'm definitely open to making another presentation. I just, these items here, we can give I guess a G3 versus G5, an example, or, some side-by-side photos or something similar to that we can coordinate with our lighting guy. Outside of that, what else would you want me to have prepared? I guess I can circle up with you offline after, tomorrow or something and make sure I'm not missing anything.
Well, I think one of the things that we heard from DG was the residential impact. And so with regard to if we do have some bleed over or trespassing into an area that if you guys would address again, how you would handle that on a case by case basis, because it's going to be complaint driven.
Well, and again, our standard is such that it can't trespass in that direction. But, so
But if
that,
we get a complaint, you
if
get
we
it.
had a complaint, yeah, absolutely, code
Yeah.
enforcement for sure, and having it, and we do try and do the proactive approach.
And then that 45-foot height, if you could tell us how you came to that, or be prepared to discuss that with us.
Yeah, I can tell you then, or I can tell you now. It's,
Let's do it in the entire presentation. Yeah,
and
then we can respond to.
the last one is that I heard pretty consistently the thought about a separation distance from the residential
Right.
zones.
Yes.
And so, I guess maybe having, having a proposal from you as to what you might be comfortable with for a separation distance might be a good starting point for our conversation along those lines.
And maybe some examples of how much distance there is, because you already have this information from Boise and the other recent build.
sure, we can provide some examples.
My thought would be also that we take a look at the hours of operation and why it's important to be 1 o'clock as opposed to 11 or 12 or any other time.
Yeah.
And then the second piece would be, who would be other users? If there are not top golf type competitors, but who else would be?
That's not a fair question to ask the applicant.
Yeah, we can't ask them that. We got to come up with that. That's something we should probably do between now and then. Start really nailing and thinking about. Phil obviously is in the business, but the rest of us can. Yeah. Okay. Joe, any other comments?
I want to say this, do a little Googling, because it's amazing how much you can, how much background you can get just by, playing around on the internet.
And you could direct us, if you Google, you or Amy or someone could point us if you see things that we can look at as well.
Absolutely.
Because we can Google and end up in the wrong ball field. So,
Literally.
Well,
exactly. Anybody else online? Joe, DG?
Real quickly, I think the important thing, and this is also for Scott, is what I see tonight is we are trying to find a way to make this work, as opposed to trying to be in opposition to it. And I think that's important, is that we work through this so that we find a reasonable solution for both the applicant and the inhabitants of the city.
Agreed, Joe.
DG, any other thoughts?
Agree wholeheartedly. I've enjoyed us working this out at the benefit of the community. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay,
Just
Jim.
have one other question, I guess. I'll just throw it out for the group, but it's nothing related to light intrusion, but sound intrusion. And how do we deal? How does the council deal with sound intrusion?
So we do have some sign
Specific.
regulations and noise regulations. I will share those with you at the next workshop.
Appreciate it. Okay.
All right. So next slide.
Next
Next slide.
workshop. Proposed amendment for fueling stations as an accessory use.
Yes. so-
Lisa,
Yes, thank you. We started this several meetings ago. We had to, with we were coming back for our second workshop and our meeting went too long. And then I was out of town. So it's been a couple months since we have talked about this. But the good news is that I was very fresh on the discussion when I prepared this presentation. So I think I will be able to help bring you back to kind of the conversation. Next slide, please. So, gas stations and convenience stores are a limited use in the RDC and C2 zones. And right now, this is what the standard says. Gas stations and convenience stores are limited to underground storage disposals that not being located within 1,000 feet of a wellhead. That's a pretty good idea. Pump islands and other fuel dispensing tanks, such as propane, has to be located at least 25 feet of the right of way. Also a really good idea. And convenience stores and gas stations shall not exceed 8 pump sites, and the building footprint shall not exceed 8,000 square feet per lot. A pump site is one dispenser, which may be double-sided. But again, the use is a gas station / convenience store. That's the only similar use that we have in our development code. Next slide, please. So we're looking at proposing a new use category that would be called an accessory fueling stations. Be a limited use in the RDC and C2 zones, which are the freeway commercial zones. And that it must be accessory to a permitted principal use within that zone. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to share with you the red areas on the map are the freeway commercial zones that we're talking about. And C1 is the yellow zone. Next slide, please. So as you can see, the only zones where it is allowed as a limited use is C1 and C2 and M3. And M3 is very limited. You can only provide a new gas station in the M3 zone if you're replacing an existing gas station. So they don't want any more gas stations in the M3 zone. So why we're focusing on C1 and C2, because those are the two zones that do allow gas stations and convenience stores. Next slide, please. So these are the proposed limited uses standards for an accessory fueling station. Could potentially be fueling station, must be accessory to the principal use that is permitted within the zone, what we just said. Underground storage tank limits within 1,000 feet of the wellhead, again, still a good idea. Pump islands and other fuel dispensing tanks shall be located at least 25 feet from the right of way, also a good idea. Fuel stations shall be not exceed 12 pump sites, And a pump site is one dispenser, which may be double-sided. Fueling stations must not front on an arterial street. Next slide, please. So what could it be accessory to? Well, and these are the types of things that typically you see an accessory gas station with. I've crossed out agricultural uses, convenience stores, and industrial parks because we already deal with gas stations / convenience stores. Industrial parks, we don't really have any. Agricultural uses, we don't really permit within the city. But some of the other uses that could potentially would be big box stores, fleet fueling stations, grocery stores, marinas and boat docks, and truck stops. Next slide, please. Other potential uses might be for delivery and logistics companies, construction companies, public transit agencies, waste management companies, utility companies, taxis and ride-sharing services, governmental agencies, corporate fleets, long-haul trucking companies. Now, some of these we wouldn't expect to see here in our city, but again, the question came up, what accessory to what? So I really wanted to just kind of share some thoughts with you about what it could be. Next slide, please. So you also asked me to go out and get you some visual images. So this of these fueling stations that have up to 12 pumps. This is a Safeway on Newport Highway in the city of Spokane. Next slide, please. This is the Fred Meyers on Sprague Avenue. Next slide, please. Costco on Sprague Avenue. Next slide, please. And with that, you asked me to come back with more information, and then you wanted to discuss this. So again, I really just wanted to answer some of the questions that you all had. And so I'm open for questions or discussion on the concept.
Anyone? Inside the chamber, nobody is raising their hand. Online, do you have any comments?
I'll start.
Nothing to add here.
Okay, go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, no, I have no issues with going from 8 pump sites to 12. Would the maximum building size be the same?
So the maximum building site applies to convenience stores. So
okay.
For some of those other uses, obviously that 8,000 square foot limit doesn't make sense. If it was a big box store or grocery store or something like that, obviously we're talking about larger footprints.
Okay, and then is there a sales tax benefit to the city for fuel purchase?
Yes.
Yes.
And then I appreciate your examples because many, I'm sure, have memberships to those places that would like to use their points for fuel or whatever. So it's some sort of a well, I don't even know what the term of the not
Benefits to our citizens?
Not there we go. Benefit to the citizens. There you go. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't put words in your mouth.
No, I was looking for that word. I couldn't draw it out. Thank you.
The benefit as opposed to an eyesore. And with
Well,
regard,
it may be that too.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's not. I'm just,
yeah,
Well, the reason I asked the question on the sales tax is if it's one of the others and it's a commercial fueling station, or, I mean, there's like Pride Fuel, for example, but it has to be in association, it has to be secondary, it can't be standalone.
so it cannot be standalone. That is
Okay.
correct.
Right.
That is
You know what I'm
correct.
talking about,
It's-
those Pride fueling stations?
Yeah, yes,
You can't, that's not what we're talking about.
no. But
Secondary
it could,
use.
right, it has to be a secondary
It's an
use,
accessory.
accessory
Yeah.
to an approved primary use in that zone.
Sign me up.
Joe, anything?
Yes, please. Lisa, is this coming from a third party or is it coming from city staff?
It is coming from the mayor on behalf of a third party who is seriously looking at the city, who and who wanted to bring this forward quicker than the annual cycle, which now it's really not. It's really caught up in the annual cycle anyhow. So yeah.
Well, then the anonymity concerns me. That's one consideration. The other consideration is this is going to fly in the face of us wanting to lower greenhouse gases within the city, which we're going to be required to do. So I have some concerns. I'm not saying no, I'm just saying I have some concerns here.
Fair enough. Very good points.
Anybody else? Where would you like us to go with this?
So I can move this forward to start the SEPA process and get that going. So not for the next meeting, but for our July meeting, it could come back as a hearing again for you to provide a recommendation. And again, the mayor was agnostic to the decision. She was just trying to facilitate the question. If that makes sense.
Do you need us to vote on a recommendation?
No,
Okay.
no,
I think
that
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 we
happens
addressed-
at the hearing. That happens at the hearing.
Yes,
So
I know.
I have exactly what I need. Thank you all.
But, well, I don't know. Did everybody get a chance to weigh in? Dale, I didn't hear if you had something.
Nothing to add. Thank you kindly.
Okay.
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 Next slide, please. The third one, and this is a relatively quick one, wanted to talk to you about the suspension of our annual cycle for comprehensive plan and development code amendments for 2025 and 2026. Next slide, please. So give you a context. So City Development Code 10.4B5 provides for amendments to our comprehensive plan or development code text and allows privately initiated comp plan development code amendments to be processed annually with applications due April 1st. And they must be processed in the same calendar year. There's a notable exception for an actual zone change because there's both the quasi judicial and legislative issues. So sometimes it does take longer than a year. Typically involves significant staff resources and dominates the planning commission schedule in any given year. And that is true. I mean, think about last year with the code amendments that we had going forward. It was a lot. It's a heavy lift. We are looking at a pretty significant work program over the course, and next year is going to be probably the heaviest part of the lift, but even after that, the whole adoption process for the comp plan, you can only amend your comp plan once a year. And so that is state law. So next slide, please. So again, the comp plan periodic update is due on June 30th of 2026. Our planning period officially kicks off on July 1st of this year. As I said, significant staff resources. You've heard my dog and pony show on it. You've seen the work program. You're going to be very busy. Staff is going to be very busy. And it really does require a robust planning commission participation through adoption. It also demands robust public engagement. And these comp plan and code amendments can also really take a lot out of the community as well. And we don't want to reach a point of public participation burnout when we're approaching something that's so critical to this community as our comprehensive plan. Development code amendments will be required in the 6 months following the comp plan adoption also. So 2026, the last half of it, we're going to be really hustling to get code amendments that we need to have done in that time frame. Next slide, please. So staff is recommending suspending the annual comp plan development code amendment cycle for 2025 and 26. That'll allow both staff and you, the planning commission, to focus your efforts on the comp plan. Will require an ordinance of city council to suspend the annual cycle and staff is requesting that the planning commission make a recommendation with regard to this proposal. So this is something that Amy and I did when we were with the city of Spokane in the last comprehensive plan cycle for exactly the same reason. And so there is precedent for doing it in another jurisdiction, given the magnitude of the changes that are happening with this comp plan cycle. I think it is a worthy undertaking, and that's my opinion. But I'm asking that you consider supporting that. It is an ordinance that we take forward to city council. I'd have to do a SEPA review on it, but with your recommendation, it's not really a development code per se. It's just suspending that temporarily. So next slide. I'm open for questions, discussion, or possible motion.
Okay, Phil.
Thank you. My only question, Lisa, is would you leave any kind of a mechanism for an emergency action?
So
'Cause you talk
again,
about 2 years of no privately initiated
right,
changes.
so we always have the opportunity to ask the mayor to direct staff, or the mayor can direct. And obviously, if we have an issue that needs to be addressed, we'll do it. And so this is only dealing with the privately initiated. So if there is a good and valid reason to bring it forward, we will try and there is still a mechanism to do that.
I figured that was the answer, but I just wanted to.
Yeah, no,
Sure.
and I recognize that, but I really, I think about the time that this commission, that city council, that staff put into the zone change in the River District last year. And, we won't get the plan across the finish line if we have something like that come up.
So in essence, you've experienced any privately initiated amendments already, and you'll not take any again until April.
Yes,
Up
and
till
we've,
April 20.
we've actually been telling, one of the reasons why Topgolf brought this proposal forward quickly is because in pre-development, we told them that we were going to be proposing this. So the likelihood was that that this would be their last shot to do it.
I have no issues with it, but
I don't have any issues. Anyone, any comments inside? Online? Or do we have any
No.
comments?
No comment
No,
here.
ma'am. No, sir.
All right, then I'll entertain a motion
so moved.
to suspend the privately initiated comp plan and development code amendments and the 2025-2026 comp plan update cycle. Phil has moved. Second,
Second.
second by Jim Bomker. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Passes unanimously.
Thank you. That I.
No, thank you. We,
Well, it's not going to. But just make the little ones here.
do we have any citizens? We don't have any in here. Do we have anybody online that has raised their hand or has indicated they want to speak? All right, moving on. Secretary's report.
So I actually have a fair bit and I will be brief, but I have a lot to cover. So we have actually offered the position of city engineer to a PE, and we will be starting on June 3rd. It could not happen soon enough. So excited. Also, a couple things, stormwater master plan is, we're going to be workshopping that at city council coming up on the 21st, and that should be adopted by the end of June. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Let's see, the transportation improvement program is also going to be workshopped with city council on the 21st, because that has to be adopted by June 30th also. We are undertaking a sub-area transportation plan with City of Spokane Valley. with WashDOT, with SRTC, and Spokane County regarding the Barker Road corridor. We have statements of qualifications from 4 transportation engineers. And we'll be selecting that shortly, and we'll get that underway, trying to figure out solutions for Barker Road, because that is probably the most significant potential impact on development in the west half of our city. So very excited about that moving forward. On Monday, I workshopped the comp plan work program, and specifically elements related to Parks and Arts with the Parks and Arts Commission. And they're very excited about taking on, having a consultant come in and lead them through the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space planning process, and taking the lead on that particular chapter. It will come back to you as part of the whole document, and you are certainly invited to participate in that program. Staff will be assisting with that, but very excited about that. I have a workshop with the Community Engagement Commission on Monday, the 13th, to brainstorm engagement strategies for the comp plan. We're going to take that, we're going to try and format it a little bit, and as we get moving closer to the public participation plan for the comprehensive plan, I'd like to schedule a joint workshop with Community Engagement Commission and the Planning Commission. So those are things coming up. Next meeting, we'll be doing the lighting code workshop again, and I may have just a draft of the code language in your packet just to touch on lightly, and just give you and let you touch on the schedule for the gas station piece. Housing, we've talked about bringing that back, the housing allocation piece and whatnot. I think we're going to bump that to July, because we're still waiting on kind of a draft of the allocation piece, the allocation tool that we're using to figure out how to allocate the different housing needs for different populations, is still a work in progress, and they're going to have an upgrade to that in the beginning of June. So I might have more specific information that I can share with you at that time that will maybe make a little bit more sense where we're going with the housing piece on that. So, Amy, am I missing anything? It just feels like the current's very rapid for us lately. Lance? Anyhow, so that's my report.
All right. Any commissioners' reports? Hearing none. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
No way, man.
Okay, that's a first and a second from Phil. We're adjourned.
I'll stay until 6. I don't care what you say.
And who seconded that? That was.
He first and seconded it.
I seconded it.